Well, a very good morning, everybody. Hello. Hello, folks. Obviously, wouldn't normally come out here and give an introduction for our guest speakers at our 10 o'clock slot, but this is, in fact, John and Morag. It's their last talk today, so let's join me in giving them a big round of applause. I do want to say a big thank you to both of them because they weren't actually due to stay on the ship this long, and obviously well, not like many of us, actually. And so I did ask them to provide some extra talks and things like that. Without hesitation, they've worked really, really hard behind the scenes to try and keep us entertained. I think they've done a fantastic job. I'm sure you're going to enjoy their final talk this morning. And we're handing over to John this morning. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, John and Morag Hocknull. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Well, good morning again, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see that you've all got out of bed. We get a lie-in for the rest of the week. Anyway, what we've done with this particular presentation, it's a standard, I suppose, presentation about Papua New Guinea. However, what we want to do is to try and, those people that have been coming along to the presentations will see how a lot of what we've spoken about actually fits into the big picture of Papua New Guinea. So for those people who don't know, Papua New Guinea, or the island of New Guinea, is the second largest island in the world. Currently, the left-hand side belongs to Indonesia, and that's called West Papua, or Papua, and the right-hand side is Papua New Guinea. Just some boring statistics for you. The population, at the last census, they declared it at 8 million. I know for a fact that's probably 10-20% short of that, simply because we were up there just after the census and we found so many people who just weren't even contacted. So I'd say it's probably nearer 10 million than 8. Official language is English. Lingua franca, most areas is Pidgin English. And stop me sometime and I'll tell you the story about the 3 little pigs in Pidgin English. You'll probably have a bit of fun. For the Australians on board, you can see the correlation between the size of Papua New Guinea is about twice the size of Victoria, and for the people from the UK, roughly the same. Any Americans on board, it's a bit bigger than California, yeah. Coastline, very long, lots and lots of islands, and as I say, there's over 850 different languages in Papua New Guinea, and these are distinctly different languages. It's not different dialects, they're different languages, and consequently each language has its own culture. That's just Papua New Guinea. If you add the 700 languages in Papua, in that whole island there, you've got probably over 1,500 totally different languages on that island. You can see there's a mountain range that runs through the middle of it. This is a school atlas, and that's because of those 2 plates that are moving, Asia plate moving down and the Australia plate moving up, causes the upswelling, and that's why you've got the mountain range through there. And you can see how close it is to Australia. We'll have a very quick run through on the Papua side of things. One of the world's largest gold and copper mines is right in the middle of Papua, and you can see down on there where that river is just about clogged, totally clogged with the tailings from that mine. It's a Freeport mine, Canadian, American owned mine, and the income from that keeps a lot of Indonesian ministers in business. Also, it causes a lot of deaths there. The local people obviously don't like it, but the Indonesian army makes short shrift of any insurrection. Lots of deaths every year in Papua. But this is what it looks like from space. You can see the size of the place. It's huge. One of the biggest holes in the ground. And a little bit closer, People that know anything about the mining industry, you'll have seen these huge dump trucks that carry something like 100 tons or whatever of earth every time they move them, massive dump trucks. Well, there's 21 of them aligned along the ridge there. So that shows you, gives you an idea of the size of the place. So we'll move away from Papua and get on to Papua New Guinea. There's just some statistics about the highest, longest, whatever. The Sepik River runs from almost the centre of Papua New Guinea north. The Fly River on the other side of the mountain range runs south. Saibai Island, which belongs to Australia, is only 4 kilometres away from Papua New Guinean mainland. There is a zone in that area for all the local people where they're allowed to trade and cross boundaries and everything else. But at the moment, with this infection COVID-19 going on, they've just stopped everybody moving anywhere. But here's a little map of the place. On the far right-hand side, you'll see an island called Bougainville. They're currently, that's the autonomous region of Bougainville now, and they've just had a referendum asking to have independence from Papua New Guinea. Personally, I don't think it's going to happen. The people on the island are thinking they'd like it, but I don't think they've really thought through it. Just to give you an idea on the population, that 8 to 10 million people, I'd say a good 60% of that population is under the age of 25. Huge disparity in the ages. And so therefore the people that live on Bougainville are quite young. There was quite a few thousand people killed on Bougainville through an insurrection that they had there. But that'll give you an idea of the whole region. Cruise ships go up there fairly regularly from Australia and have a great time, mainly in the coast here. I'll just see if my little pointer works properly. Down here is Alito. They go to the Trobriand Islands here. They go up to Rabaul, and then back down in here, there's a Conflict Islands. Occasionally, they'll go up to Madang and Wewak, up here on the north coast. If you're lucky enough to get a cruise to go up in that direction, or if it's available, grab it, go and have a look, it's fantastic. But Papua New Guinea sits right on the Ring of Fire. And as you can see, this is where all the volcanic activity is around the Pacific, and Hawaii right in the middle there, causing everybody problems. But there on the bottom, on the left-hand side, you'll see the Tongan Trench. They've had a couple of eruptions there recently, and over the last 6 or 7 years, and they've had some new islands created. And we all know what pumice stone is. You know, you use it in the bathroom to get the hard skin off your feet. Well, they've had an island of pumice stone that was over 10,000 square kilometres of pumice stone floating just below the surface of the sea, and it's floated right across. People, Australians here who know where Bribie Island is. Well, the pumice stone has been washed ashore on Bribie Island from Tonga. But currently, on the left there, those little red stars there, all the active volcanoes in that particular area. I didn't put everything in, but that's just to give you an idea of what it's like in Papua New Guinea. And here are volcanoes, extinct and active, in the region. There's currently a great deal of activity in the Rabaul area where the cruise ships go. When you cruise in there, you see them. Madang, up in Manam Island, where I was posted, that's still very active. Next door, Cadaver. But down here on the mainland, you will see Lamington. Mount Lamington was a volcano that some people in the audience may have heard about. It's now extinct, but in 1951, it blew its stack. And over 3,000 people killed there. And on the image on the bottom right, you'll see the Land Rover there that ended up in the trees. But when this volcano erupted, there was people had food gardens on it and everything else. There were villages up there. There were 4 patrol officers, the guys that did the same job as me, were killed when that eruption went off. And in the head office area, when the rescue teams went in, they found the senior person in his Jeep, at the wheel of his Jeep, and his son trying to get in the door of the Jeep. And they were just basically frozen in time when the pyroclastic eruption came down and killed everybody. But this is what happened when the volcanoes, there was 2 volcanoes erupted in Rabaul when they went off. And the one in the foreground is Mount Vulcan, and then over the back is Mount Tavuro. But they had plenty of notice. They have a volcanological observatory there, and they have plenty of notice when that was going up. So the population left town basically, and this is what happened after the eruption. This is Mount Tavuro, and the volcanological observatory is way up over the other side, but you can see all that ash. Rabaul town used to be there. It was totally covered with volcanic ash. And when you go from the ships across to some hot springs, they've got volcanic hot springs there, you actually drive past all this area and you can see the supports for various buildings just sticking up out of the volcanic ash. There used to be an airport. I think I've got a photograph of the airstrip, but this is the island that I used to look after on the left, Manam Island. And next door, or not next door, but a few miles southeast, is Long Island. When you cruise past Long Island, all you can see is what looks like a long island. There's a rise at both ends and land in the middle. And to the early navigators, it looked as though it was a long island. It's actually almost circular. That's a freshwater lake in the middle. And there's that little island there that occasionally you get a little puff of smoke comes out of that. But we went past Manam Island in 2015. This is Boyser Island on the right, which is basically a volcanic plug. It's not active, but it's just where the lava's come up and solidified. But that's what it looked like in 2015. And at night time when we cruise past it, you can see on the image there the smoke is going from centre to right. The sun is actually setting over the mainland, and that's the township of Bulgaria where we used to live. But that just keeps erupting. People go back, set up their food gardens and everything else, then it erupts again and they leave, back and forth. But that's just up the coast is Cadaver Island. This is the most recent volcano or island to erupt. Everybody thought it was extinct, and then all of a sudden, bang, off it went. If you can look at the sea horizon there, you'll see in the left-hand side of the island, looks like smoke. That's actually steam. There's one of the fissures is underwater there, and it's just boiling water that's going up and steam that's erupting out of the surface. When we went past on the ship, we didn't get into Madang because there was an anthrax scare, and so we weren't allowed to land, and we took off early, and I asked the captain to go between there's 2 islands here, in between them, so we could get a photograph and a look at it with the sunset behind. But also one of the other places that you may go into if you go up on a cruise through Papua New Guinea is southwest of Rabaul, the Vitu Islands, or Witu Islands. And this is, the ship has actually gone inside the caldera of the volcano. It's quite a spectacular place to visit, and there's really steep sides inside. And the villagers all come out in their canoes and wave at everybody. And the environmental officers saying, "Don't throw anything over the side." And the people in the canoes are saying, throw me a Coca-Cola bottle full of money. And, you know, just a little bit of interaction between the passengers and the locals. But when the ship goes in, he'll toot his horn and it echoes for ages inside this caldera. So that just gives you a bit about the geography, excuse me, of Papua New Guinea. We'll have a look at a bit about the ancient history of the place. You don't have to read it all, but you can if you wish. One of the very, very interesting things, looking at the audience, I would say that 99.9% of us have all got probably 1% Neanderthal DNA in our makeup. Papua New Guineans have got 6% Denisovan DNA in their makeup. Now, Denisovan was a homonym that was found way up in northeast Asia. It's named Denisovan after a hermit priest called Dennis lived up there, and he found the remains, and then the anthropologists and paleontologists found them, had them assessed as a brand new homonym, and they've checked the DNA from that down through Asia into Indonesia and into Papua New Guinea, and then further on into Fiji. It stops around about Fiji. But that goes to show that there is a distinct difference in DNA between the Papua New Guineans and everybody else. One of the aspects that's easily recognizable in Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands is if you see this. You'll see a little kid with blonde hair. That's not peroxide. It's just a gene. When the two parents have got the same gene, you end up with blonde-haired kids. And a lot of places you have large populations of redheads. So that's that little bit of a mix. They're not ginger, but they're sort of dark red hair. So I'll give you an idea of the ancient side of things. Now, this is something that may or may not surprise you, but in Papua New Guinea, they have the world's oldest agriculture. It's been discovered that they've been farming in Papua New Guinea for at least 7,000 years BC, so before Christ. So we're looking at pretty close to 10,000 years ago, they were actually farming. They were deliberately cultivating crops rather than being hunter-gatherers. And this is before the farming in the Euphrates and Africa and other places. So they've been able to establish that. And you saw the string bags that Morag showed you, the billen bags and everything? Well, they used that to make seine nets for fishing. Now, the net opens and closes. Now, they had that going long before Europeans were using netting to catch fish. This is something that's just been unearthed recently, Mortars and Pastels and artworks. And these have been buried in swamps. They've just dug them out. Now, when we were up there, I remember going on patrol and being presented with mortars and pestles as well, but in a totally different area to this. And the science is starting to take a deeper look at how things evolved in Papua New Guinea. As I said the other day, no wheels, no metal of any kind. Everything was done with the materials, the natural materials they had around them. But one of the reasons why the population in the highlands is so high, aside from not having malaria, because mosquitoes only go up to about 3,500 feet, or the malaria-carrying mosquitoes only go up to that height, is the fact that over 300 years ago, they introduced sweet potato. It eventually came through the islands into Papua New Guinea and then from the coast up into the highlands. In the highlands, they just used to have taro, and they grew a few yams, but When sweet potato went into the highlands, they just took off, and they ended up having more readily available carbohydrates, and consequently they got healthier, population explosion, and that's why there's such a dense population in the highlands of Papua New Guinea. Headhunting was there, it was taking trophies, and cannibalism, the last recorded cannibalism for protein's sake was in the 50s. One of the other things when it came to cannibalism just popped into my mind was when they were having a fight with each other. If one of the warriors was silly enough to go too close to the enemy and get killed, and the enemy were able to get the body, they would then drag the body up to the highest point in the area there, light a big fire, cut off a leg, throw it in the fire, and then wave it around and bite it or pretend to bite it. And basically, the people in Papua New Guinea, the similar spiritual aspects like in North America, when they say that the body's got to be complete for it to go to heaven, or the Vikings, the body's got to be complete for it to go to Valhalla. Same principle applies in Papua New Guinea. So when they cut off a leg and eat it, or pretend to eat it, the enemy knows that the spirit of that individual isn't going to make the next step. So they're going to be, they, not the enemy, they will be haunted by the spirit of the person that died. But I pointed out these to you, which I think are quite very interesting little facts about Papua New Guinea, or the island of New Guinea, was that banana, the biggest herb in the world, originated there. And there's about 3,000 or 4,000 different species of bananas, everything from the little sweet bananas through to plantain. Currently in Brisbane, they've got red bananas as well, just like a carrot. Looks like a carrot. Well, the colour looks like a carrot. But in Queensland at the university, they're developing a high vitamin A banana to take to Africa, for them to use in Africa, because there's a surfeit of vitamin A in Africa and it causes an awful lot of health problems. So they've actually discovered a banana in Papua New Guinea that's got high in vitamin A, and they're doing a bit of genetic modification, and they've developed this banana that they're taking to Africa to help with the overall health of the people in Africa. Another interesting little thing, sugar is a grass, and it evolved in the island of New Guinea and has gone around the world. They've got a reasonably self-sustaining sugar industry there, but unfortunately this sort of thing happens. Tourists go there and they think that they're being nice and kind, and they'll take a big bag of lollies along and give them to the kids. The kids, being kids, like sweet things. The parents, being parents, don't want to tell this tourist to go away, and they end up causing no end of trouble. That lady there had a huge bag full of chubba chops. If the Australians know what chubba chops are, they're lollies on sticks, and she was just gleefully spreading these around. Two things: they don't have dentists on these islands, and they definitely don't want diabetes, this is a precursor to getting people to having sweet tooth. I don't know, Reza said he was going to come along today, but he's probably still asleep. I was going to point this out to him. The superfood of the future. In Papua New Guinea, they've got thousands of different kinds of food products, leaves, ground legumes, whatever. This is marita. It's a fruit from a pandanus tree, and I reckon that when Blumenthal or whoever else gets hold of this, it's going to suddenly become the new superfood. And these ladies here will be able to make a decent income when it's in season. They'll be able to harvest the marita and send it around. So I'm going to have a talk to Reza about this and try and see if we can get him invited to Papua New Guinea. Can you imagine Reza in Papua New Guinea? Anyway, as they say, No, I think I'll have a chat to him, and if we can communicate, and then maybe get him to come on over and have a look at what they've got, because there's some fabulous stuff there. There's some fungi that grows that's about this big, and it tastes fantastic. And just getting that onto the market would be brilliant. However, this is when the first Europeans sort of discovered the place, the Portuguese and Spanish. As I mentioned before, they were trading through Indonesia, the Spice Islands and everything else. And the first bird of paradise skin that we know of was put up for auction. And this is a painting of the item in their auction booklet. And it was called a bird of paradise, as I said before, because the native people, when they stuffed it, put the taxidermy through it, they were so good that you couldn't see where the legs attached to the body, and you couldn't see where the wings attached to the body. So all that they've got there, because they're not wing feathers, they're appendages. They just grow out of the bird, the coloured ones. So what's happened is that they've seen that, and they've said, well, how did it fly? How did it land? How did it mate? How did it feed? It must have been doing it all in the air all at the same time. So therefore the bird must live in paradise. And we were talking about 16th century people here, and that's how the bird of paradise got its name. But fast forward a few years, and just before World War I, this was the administration of the island of New Guinea, Dutch New Guinea on the left, German New Guinea at the north, and British New Guinea south. Then, and I think I mentioned this to you in the previous presentation, but see the line that goes through the middle of the island there, and there's a kink next to the Union Jack. Well, that kink is the Fly River, and this is what it looks like from space. You can see the line up there and the kink in it. That line that runs through there also joins up with the line at the border between South Australia, New South Wales and Victoria. And that line, the 141 degrees east, was decided upon in 1494, long before any of this was discovered by the Spanish and the Portuguese. They split up the world, basically, and said, well, we'll have this bit, and you can have that bit. Nobody knew that this bit even existed at the time. So, roughly, this is just a rough historical timeline for Papua New Guinea. The German New Guinea was 1884, the earliest records of administration. We're talking about administration, not discovery or traders going in and getting things, but actual government administration. Up to 1914, British New Guinea, right through to 1906, and then the Queensland administration decided that it wanted to look after the place. And then we've got German New Guinea between 1914 and 1921 was a combination of organisations that looked after it, and it was named the Territory of New Guinea. The United Nations got involved in it after the First World War, or the League of Nations, and during the Second War, ANGO was the administration, the unit that looked after the whole of the island. So this was the two areas becoming one. And then right through to 1975, when the Australian government handed over the country back to the Papua New Guineans on Independence Day. So there's quite an interesting backstory in Papua New Guinea, but it was all predicated on war and invasion. Papua New Guineans didn't want the people there. They said, oh, go away. But they never ever, there was no insurrection in Papua New Guinea, not even in Papua, the Dutch side, or now the Indonesian side. There is now, but there wasn't then. In 1914, One of the things the Germans were doing is they set up shortwave radio stations right around the world. They had communications around the world that knocking spots off everybody. And one of the radio stations was at a place called Bitapaka, which is in Rabaul. And the Australians knew about it, or the British knew about it, and so they said, send a force up there to take the radio station to break the communications link, because all of the World War I the raiders, German raiders that were out around the place sinking various ships here and there, they were all being communicated with through Bitapaka. So they sent an expedition up, and they were mainly all naval reservists from Queensland, and there was a few British officers amongst them, and they took them up there September the 11th, another significant day in history, is when they arrived, and 2 days later the Germans surrendered the radio station. But there were six naval members killed in that particular action. And if you actually, it's a very interesting reading. I'd recommend it if you want to read about it, then find some more information about it, because the actual action that took place was quite interesting on how it all happened. One of the things that happened at that time, oh, by the way, there's the Commonwealth War Graves Commission cemetery for both World War I and World War II is at Bitapaka, and that is a beautiful, beautiful place to visit if you get to Papua New Guinea and you go to Rabaul. But one of the things that happened is at the time was that I'm talking about Australia, they had 2 submarines during the First War. AE-1 was sent with the fleet up to take Bitapaka. The second one hadn't actually, it was commissioned in the UK, and it hadn't actually left to go out to Australia, and they diverted it into the Dardanelles. So it was harrying Turkish shipping in the Dardanelles. Unfortunately, it was discovered, and the captain of the AE-2 got all the crew off, and he pulled the plug and sank the AE-2. Now, 14th of September, the AE-1 was on exercises. It left Rabaul Harbour, it went out through the harbour, turned right and disappeared. And for 103 years they were looking for it, and they eventually found it. This little red star on the map on the right there isn't the location, it's roughly the location, but because it's a war grave, they're not releasing the exact location because they don't want souvenir hunters going through. But that was found in December the 21st, in 2017. One problem rectified. But then we move on again, war again in New Guinea. In that, just in the Papua New Guinea side of things, and not the Irian Jaya or Papua side, 216,000 deaths, and that's Japanese, American, British, Indian subcontinent, all of those people that died in that particular area. So it was very, very active. The Kokoda Trail is something that Australians know about, Brits might have heard about it. Campaigns like Shaggy Ridge I mentioned earlier. So it was a very, very active place. And the initial fighting in Papua New Guinea were, again, like in World War I, the naval reservists. In World War II, it was the army reservists that were there. They were called chocos, or chocolate soldiers. They were the conscripts, the reservists. They went up to Papua New Guinea and they held the Japanese back in time for when the Australian troops left the Middle East and came back to Australia, and then the battle-hardened Australian troops went up to Papua New Guinea. And it's the first time in World War II that the Japanese were actually beaten on land, was in Milne Bay. And that was the beginning of the end of the Japanese. The Battle of the Coral Sea was the big naval battle in exactly the same area. first time the Japanese were defeated at sea. So all in that area there was the beginning of the end of the Japanese involvement in World War II. I showed you this image the other day about the retreat coming up this big ridge and how they discovered at least 300 bodies in this ravine of these retreating Japanese soldiers. So, you know, when you're starving and walking through that sort of country, you know the end's going to come sometime. It's bad enough being up there eating bully beef and rice, never mind not having anything to eat at all. But that's the sort of terrain that they had to retreat through. And this is an interesting little piece that I showed you the other day, was the only poisonous bird in the world. Amazing little creature, and fortunately there's not a lot of them around, so else we'd all be in trouble. Alfred Hitchcock, eat your heart out. But anyway, I showed you this the last time. I'll do it.
Hello and welcome to a very special Can We Help? This, my friends, is our 100th episode, and we have something a little different for you. We've broken free of the studio to where magic occurs. And we're going to see what happens next with two of our most remarkable lost and found stories. Come on! Jonas Ramon shared with us a very emotional journey, and his reunion with his mum was unforgettable. Later on, we'll find out just how that relationship has blossomed. John Hocknull asked for our help to find some old friends in Papua New Guinea who had a massive impact on his life. When he came back home, he was so touched, he decided he had to do something. We'll have that story for you in a while.
Yeah, we met John Hocknull last year. He asked us if we could help him make his dream come true. Let's see what happened. These images, filmed more than 30 years ago, are of the Huli people in Tari, a small village in the southern highlands of Papua New Guinea. A place John and Morag Hocknull called home for 4 years.
It was definitely a culture shock, but we were there to live a life experience that really cannot be replaced.
The year was 1973, and John had just taken up an Australian government offer to become a local administrator, otherwise known as a Kiap. On paper, a Kiap's role was to help govern the fragmented and often warring groups of villages and help pave the way for a transition towards independence. In reality, the Kiaps had a hand in everything, from running the bank and post office to the justice system.
I was a commissioned police officer that actually told the policemen to go off and investigate and arrest people, and then I was actually the officer in charge of the calaboose, the little lockup that we had, so I actually had to look after the prisoners that I'd convicted. And that's the type of work we did.
John and Morag haven't been back to Tari since they left in 1977 and asked for our help to find out how the village has fared, in particular what became of three very close friends, Stephen, Jacinta and Hogogo, the second in charge of the village.
Hogogo was a real character. He was a bit of a political mover and shaker in the area, and a very, very astute guy. Learnt Pidgin English very, very quickly. I only hope that Hogogo is still alive, because I'd really like to go and shake his hand, because he was a real character.
When we began our search, the hope was all three were alive. The difficulty was in communicating with an area so remote. The breakthrough came when a local gas and oil company identified Stephen, and we were able to arrange for John and Morag's return flight to Tari.
I've got absolutely no idea how we as a family are remembered by the Huli people. No idea at all. I'm John, yeah.
Stephen Lialu, how you doing?
Hi, Stephen, how are you? Well done.
Stephen, Hogogo and Jacinta are all there to greet them.
This is brilliant. I'm overwhelmed with the reception.
Despite the joy of the reunion, John soon learns the reality of life in Tari today. Unfortunately, very few of the roads, bridges, small hospitals or schools they set up still operate.
When
we had set up that provincial government and then all this, we thought that they would give us money to maintain the plantations and roads and bridges, all this, but now money goes to the pocket long all now. Service long, people know that, so. And most of them, that's why all something broke down.
Yeah. These are some top people, but it doesn't sound as though the government really takes much notice of them, unfortunately. Yes, it's a pity. I'm happy I came. I'm glad the people here have got good memories of us. That's an important thing, and I only wish a lot more could be done.
When John returned to Australia, his desire to help the community only intensified. In particular, he felt the need to provide for the schools that had suffered from a decade of social unrest and governmental neglect.
I was told that the libraries in the schools had either been destroyed or because they closed a lot of the schools down, the books just deteriorated through lack of use and care and maintenance, and they just didn't have any library resources.
Using his skills as a professional fundraiser, John was determined to make a difference.
I made a few calls to a few of my colleagues and said, look, do you happen to have old uniforms? Are you replenishing your library? Do you have any school resources that you don't want? And just from those few phone calls, they said, yes, we've got this material. Received some letters down from the school.
What John modestly describes as materials was in fact $50,000 worth of donated goods, including 2.5 tons of books, 20 computers, tables, chairs and school uniforms. To get it all to PNG, John called in a very old favour.
When I was in Papua New Guinea working there, I was on the coast and I actually rescued one of the shipping company's small coastal traders from being broken up on the reef, and I had a letter from the company saying thanks very much, and if there's anything I can do, let us know. I mean, this letter was 32, 33 years old, so I dragged the letter out and I rang them up and I said, hey, what do you reckon? And they said, wow, this is amazing. Yes, we'll help you. So they shipped the container at no cost.
The resources were distributed between 21 schools in the area, and the local pathology centre was provided with its only computer. John wasn't there for the delivery, but the letters of thanks and photos he's received show how much the gifts were appreciated.
The benefits of receiving the books in particular for the youngsters is going to be immeasurable, because it's a resource that they didn't have, and B, they're desperate to learn English. These resources have increased the number of opportunities available to these kids.
You know, when we first met John Hocknull last year, it was really clear to me that 3 hours in that community was not going to be enough, that he was frustrated and wanted to do something.
Some people just make you feel like you don't do enough sometimes, don't they?
Yeah, his commitment's fantastic, and it's not about charity.
Not just a matter of charity.
Yeah, I think the concern is if it's charity, then the community doesn't develop. So he's trying to establish some real business and educational links between the community and Brisbane. So good luck to John. It's a great thing he's doing.
Thank you, Jeff. Well done. Over the years, we've had many experts in the show.
So that was back then. In that particular area, this is what's happening right now. No, they haven't taken ships up into the highlands, but they're actually exporting gas. Liquefied natural gas is going out by the container. There's, I don't know, billions of dollars worth of gas has already been exported. And it's processed in this plant way up in the middle of nowhere. And to build this plant there, they had to build an airstrip because they weren't going to build a road to get in. So it cost $500 million, probably a lot more than $500 million, but that's what they're saying, to build this runway, single one-way runway. And that is 300 meters longer than the runway in Port Moresby. The reason they built it was to take this aircraft, the world's biggest freighter, and its job was to bring in 87 loads at 200 tons a load into Tari, into Como, with all the equipment. So this is the sort of stuff that they were bringing in to build this conditioning plant for the gas. And it's been, as I say, it's been pumping gas for quite some time now. But the major exports that they have are timber. Unfortunately, there's a lot of corruption in the timber industry. Palm oil, fortunately, it's not, they're not denuding the place to build, to put palm oil plantations in. They're actually cutting down old coconut plantations and putting palm oil in its place. But coffee, brilliant coffee from Papua New Guinea, and all of these other products. Tourism is one of the biggest money spinners for Papua New Guinea as well. But they have things like day-old chicks are flown, they're not day-old, but they were flown in from New Zealand, and crocodile skins, the works. So there's a whole pile of things. Cocoa, like I showed you before, copra made from coconuts. There's tons and tons of copra still being sent out. This helps make your soap. Coffee, I'd say beautiful coffee. But on the 15th of September, this is one of the proudest moments of my life. Whoops. This was the evening of the Australian flag coming down for the very, very last time. In the patrol post, there was myself, Morag, our brand new baby, and Morag's mum, and 75,000 Papua New Guineans in this particular area. And that was it. That particular flag we hung on to and took it down with us when we left Papua New Guinea, and we stored it away, and then I went to get it out and I found out the cockroaches had been in it. And the only thing that was left was the Union Jack and the 7 stars. All the blue material had been eaten by cockroaches, unfortunately. But that's yours truly, and the wee dog. And the following day, or at midnight, we actually lit this huge bonfire to let people know that they were independent. Unfortunately, 99.9% of the people had all gone to bed, and so we had to go and waken them all up and tell them that they had a brand new independent nation. And we have a sound system, and we've got some very good bagpipe music, and we put it on there, and you know when you've got a stereo, you turn it up to 3 or 4, it's kind of loud. Well, I had it up to 11, with the bagpipes blasting right through the valleys. They heard it forever. But this is the following day when the dignitaries came in from the main centre to hoist the Papua New Guinea flag on an independent nation. I say, apart from the birth of my 2 sons, proudest moment of my life was that day. And this was what happened. I say you can see Morag in there just behind the Papua New Guinea flag. We've got very, very fond memories. But that airstrip that they built there cost $500 million plus. They had a 7.5 earthquake, and that split went right down the entire length of the runway. And they've since fixed it up. But you can see all the mountainsides collapsed into the rivers. And what happened with these was that all the rivers became very torpid, and the people downstream, they used the water from the rivers to make sago, and they need clean water to make their sago. And for hundreds and hundreds of miles, the water was just brown dirt, so they couldn't produce food. So it just didn't impact the people in this area. Fortunately, there's probably only half a dozen people killed in this particular area. But way downstream, it took them forever to actually get the fresh, clean water for them to make their food. But as I say, I'm twice the man today as I was back then. That was me on just coming off patrol. But as I mentioned in a previous presentation, there's some reading for you if you're interested. Come and see me, get the names of these things. Go, because you're being quarantined, get your kids, if you can, to go along to the library, if the libraries are open, to get that DVD of Birds of Paradise with David Attenborough. And there's a fantastic section of that called The Blank in the Map. We've had a lot of people speak to us about the charity work and everything in Papua New Guinea. Rotary International, for any Rotarians here, even in the UK, we can put them in touch with people in Australia to help. The main cost is the cost of freighting containers to Papua New Guinea. It's not the donated items. That's dead easy. Getting medical equipment, school resource and everything is easy. It's the cost of freighting it up there that's the big problem. But they ladies in Australia, right throughout Australia, make birthing kits, and they make baby bundles up, and we send them up there. The main organisation in Brisbane is called Someone Who Cares. That's the lady that I deal with, and we've got lots and lots of things happening. If you want to make contact with us over the next week, ask questions, we can give you details, emails and all the other bits and pieces, please do. In the meantime, I'll just read this out quickly. We hope we've been able to provide you with some interesting entertainment over the last long sea days. We also hope your onward journey is uneventful and your families are all safe and well. If you've enjoyed the presentations, please let P&O Cruises know. If you haven't, let them know as well. Please thank you, the production crew, everybody that's helped us down here on the stage. Thanks very, very much indeed. Entertainment team have been fabulous, and enjoy the rest of your time on the beautiful ship, Arcadia.